priority free agent that you think the Niners need to re-sign, who is it?
For me, there's no doubt. Now, the people who know me know that I'm all in on this player, but it's DJ Jones. Okay. And I like DJ Jones. I think the Niners beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl if they had a healthy DJ Jones. They didn't. And so Damian Williams kind of ran it up and down on him. And that was the difference in the game.
True.
DJ Jones he gives you a little bit more as a pass rusher than you think a 6'1", 320 player would give you. True. And then he's a tremendous culture player. I mean, you're around the team. Nobody's really been around the team the last couple of years, but people that know this team, know the locker room, know that DJ he's a culture guy, man. He shows up. He's very workmanlike. He's almost impossible to uproot out of there. He controls the A gaps. You're not running it up the gut as long as he's on the field. He's their best run defender on that defensive line. And I think he gives you enough as a pass rusher. I don't know what the price tag is going to be. In the past, teams have not understood the value of DJ Jones. And I can't believe the Niners got him back this year for the price they did. And I think he'll be more popular this year. But, man, I think he's the guy. You can find a guard. I mean, heck, the Niners won a Super Bowl with Dan Audick. People talk about Tomlinson. Okay, Tomlinson's solid, but you can find a guard. But you can't find a two-gap defensive tackle who shuts down the run and can give you a little push against the pass.
Hold on real quick. My dad's calling. Dad, we're streaming. What's up? Okay, I'll do it right now. Thanks, Dad. My dad has a question for you.
All right.
He wants to know what Kyle Shanahan is like behind the scenes.
I don't know. I really don't. I haven't been around Kyle Shanahan a whole lot. I'll say this: doing the KNBR stuff, we had Kyle on regularly. I really like Kyle. As far as just like a dude. I think he's lives by a code. I don't think he would shank you for a nickel. You know what I mean? I don't think he's the kind of guy that. I think he's a loyal friend. I think he's a good. I think. And I know that the players can see through phonies. And if he were a rah, who's got it better than us, I think people would basically be like, you know what, it wouldn't last. The fact of the matter is he's always the one thing you cannot say about the Niners is they play hard. They lose football games, but they don't lose football games because they're not bringing it. And if you're a coach, to me, that's the number one goal of a coach is you have to get your guys to ball out and play and show up. And I kind of feel like under Shanahan, they pretty consistently ball out. They pretty consistently play. Now, I got my own complaints with Shanahan. Heck, Deebo Samuel touched the goddamn football twice in the second half of the Super Bowl and was missing in action in the second, last 8 minutes. The last
13 fucking minutes of the NFC Championship game.
13 minutes. So, I mean, that, and when I asked him about it, he's like, well, that's not necessarily the way it works. To me, I think that is definitely the way it works. You decide, the Niners got buried on the goal line against the Bengals, needed a touchdown in Super Bowl 23. They didn't not use Jerry Rice. When the Rams used Cooper Kupp when they needed him, the Niners need to use Deebo a lot more.
When you criticize him or you even question him, he responds like, you don't know football. It's like, well, come on. I mean, you don't need to go there. Other than that, I like him too. All right, let me get back.
He seems like a really cool guy.
Only reason I took that question from my dad is because he donated $10. Thank you, Dad.
He's got it.
My
He's got
priority for agent to re-sign is Arden Key. I think Arden Key established himself as the second best pass rusher on this team after Bosa. I think he's really, really effective as a one-on-one guy. Bosa gets the double teams. You need guys who can win one-on-ones. I don't think anyone wins one-on-ones on this team more frequently, other than Bosa, than Key. I think he's going to cost you about what DJ Jones costs you, and you just have to decide who's easy to replace, the interior pass rusher or the interior run defender. And that's a tough one because DJ Jones is really, really good against the run. If you watch the film, in the wide nine, both defensive tackles are really exposed to double teams, and you're just constantly getting double teamed by guards and centers. You can't move him. You cannot move that man. And Eric Armstead, you can move. As good as Eric Armstead is, DJ Jones is a freaking boulder. So I would take the pass rusher though.
I love Key. Isn't it interesting how they got Key for nothing?
Nothing.
And he became the key to their NASCAR package. Yep. And he, on the stunts, I mean, he's just big enough to be able to kind of handle the interior players, and he's just quick enough to still threaten the edge.
Mhm.
So I like Key, but to me, it's interesting because they paid nothing for Key and got tremendous production.
Maybe they can
They
get the next
paid
two.
through the nose for Ebukam, who I gotta think is the guy that either is going to be restructured or cut, because in his second year number is fat, and I
It
saw
is
him come
8
on at
million.
the end of the year, but come on, I mean, I didn't see enough from Ebukam to warrant the kind of cash that he's due to make this year. So I
He
think
had
he might
five
be
and
in
a
the
half
crosshairs.
sacks the last 8 games. I don't know if you would project that over a full season, but he did. He was good in the playoffs. I'll give him
He
that. But yeah, he
was,
was
he was.
nothing
He's got a
until the
great
last.
motor. He's really strong. But man, I mean, did you see his number for this year? It's big. It's
It's
eight
eight.
nine
It's 8+.
million.
Yeah.
Yeah, $8
But
million for Ebukam to play in a rotation. I mean, I'd have to look at the roster, but man, the other guy I'd like to see back is I'd like to see Jordan Willis back. You mentioned Key. I'd like Willis back as well, and I think Willis might actually come back for cheap. That'd be
Willis
my
is good.
guess.
I agree.
Yeah.
Murphy says if the Niners use the draft picks to improve their secondary and O-line depth last year instead of Trey, they would have won the Super Bowl last year.
If they had used the draft picks to improve the secondary and the O-line depth, well, I mean, they had good O-line depth. They just didn't trust those
They
guys.
drafted Aaron Banks.
I mean, John Lynch insists that Aaron Banks is a player. Jalen Moore, I think, is a player, but obviously the Niner O-line coach felt like Tom Compton was a better player.
And was right.
So yeah, and I look at the line as if they're going to lose Tomlinson, they need a guard, but you got Banks, and you're probably going to plug him in at some point. You've got your starters if you're going to bring. You got McGlinchey at right tackle, and you've got McKivitz. I was impressed with McKivitz, and you've got obviously you've got Jalen Moore, and you've got Banks, and you've got McKivitz. So you have you're only going to keep 8 or 9 offensive linemen. They have room for one good offensive line addition. It could be in the draft or it could be in free agency, but they already have good depth there. I don't think the O-line needs a lot of work, to be honest.
Dad, I got it. Thank you for the another $10 I owe you. I'll pay you back. Jackson is good, but why would Bill Belichick give him up? What's that about?
It's a good question. Bill Belichick knows him. They've got cap room too. They've got plenty of room to keep him. I don't know. I'll say this: before I sign J.C. Jackson, I would investigate the character because he did get kicked out of a couple schools, I believe. He wound up at Maryland eventually. There was an issue there that I'm sure NFL security people and NFL front office have investigated. But that's a great question because Belichick coaches that position. He knows it as well as anybody who's ever coached. So if he's willing to kiss him off, maybe he feels like he's not worth what he's going to get in the open market, which, realistically, how many guys are? I mean, when you're the number one corner in a thin corner market in a passing league, you're getting broken off. And maybe he just doesn't want to pay the freight.
Yep. I mean, he traded Chandler Jones, who is still the best defensive end in the league. So just because he's done with the guy, just maybe he feels he can replace him for cheaper. Maybe
Dump
it's money.
Seymour's in the Hall of Fame,
Yeah,
so
true.
And maybe he felt like he got the best out of J.C. Jackson and doesn't want to pay him big dollars. Maybe he doesn't believe in his professionalism. You never know. I mean, we're projecting at this point kind of recklessly, but you know what? It is interesting that one of the great defensive backfield coaches ever is willing to kind of let the number one free agent corner just walk.
The pastor SSB says, why isn't Steve Young on the 49ers coaching staff?
Because Steve Young has FU money and has better use of time than to spend 120 hours. Steve Young, I just saw on TV with Kornheiser and Wilbon. And we'll get Steve Young on with us at some point. Steve sent me a really nice note the other day, and he's a great guy. And Steve Young could easily be on an NFL coaching staff, but I don't think people realize when you sign up to coach, the money's lean unless you're the head coach or the coordinator,
yes.
And the hours. You think of the hardest you've ever worked at any job, and then add 40 hours to that, and then those guys still work harder than that.
Here's how it works. They never see the sun. They get into the facility around 6. Sun's not out. There's no actual windows. You leave around 8:45. Sun's down. It's just like you're a vampire. It's rough.
And Steve's got kids. He's got a wife. He's got kids. He's got a life. He's got money in the bank. He's playing the AT&T. If you really have good money in the bank, you're not doing that.